Hi guys, we are back with Stargirl, and we are in Chapter 8. So, Chapter 8, page 36. The change began around Thanksgiving. By December 1st, Stargirl Caraway had become the most popular person in school. How did it happen? Was it the cheerleading? The last football game of the season was her first as a cheerleader. The grandstand was packed. The grandstand is where you sit, like what we would call bleachers. Students, parents, and alumni. Never had so many people come to a football game to see a cheerleader. She did all the regular cheers and routines, and more in fact, she never stopped cheering. While the other girls were taking breaks, she went on jumping and yelling. She roamed areas that had always been ignored, the far ends of the grandstand. The spectators behind the goalpost, and the snack bar parents found themselves with their own arm-pumping cheerleader. She ran straight across the 50-yard line and joined the other team's cheerleaders. We laughed as they stood there with their mouths open. She cheered in front of the players' bench, and she was shooed away by a coach. At halftime, she played her ukulele with the band. In the second half, she got acrobatic. She did cartwheels and backflips. At one point, the game was stopped, and 3 zebra-shirted officials ran toward one end zone. She had shinnied up a goalpost, tightrope walked out to the middle of the crossbar, and was now standing there with her arms raised in a touchdown sign. The goalpost is the thing at the end. It's like this, where they kick the ball through, so she was out in the middle. She was commanded down to a standing ovation and flashing cameras. Can you see this? Sorry, I'm still trying to figure out camera angles. There we go, better. As we filed out afterward, no one mentioned how boring the game itself had been. No one cared that the Electrons had lost again. In his column the next day, the sports editor of the Micah Times referred to her as the best athlete on the field, and we couldn't wait for basketball season. Was it Hillary Kimball backlash? Several days after the birthday song, I heard a shout down the hallway. "Don't!" I ran. A crowd was gathering at the top of the stairwell. They were all staring at something, and I pushed my way through. Hillary Kimball was standing at the upper landing, grinning. She was smiling. And she was holding Cinnamon, the rat, dangling by its tail over the railing. Nothing but space between it and the first floor. Stargirl was on the steps below, looking up. Whose rat is Cinnamon? Right, it's Stargirl's rat. So, Hillary Kimball is holding Stargirl's poor rat over the railing. And Stargirl was on the steps below, looking up. The scene froze. The bell for the next class rang, and nobody moved. Stargirl said nothing, merely looked. The 8 toes of Cinnamon's front paws splayed apart. Its tiny, unblinking eyes were bulging, black as cloves. Again, a voice rang out. "Don't, Hillary!" Suddenly, Hillary dropped it. Someone screamed, but the rat only fell to the floor at Hillary's feet. She sent Stargirl a final sneer and left. Was it Dory Dilson? Dory Dilson was a brown-haired 9th grader who wrote poems in a loose-leaf notebook half as big as herself, and whose name nobody knew until the day she sat down at Stargirl's table for lunch. Next day at the table was full. No longer did Stargirl eat lunch or walk the hallways or do anything else at school alone. Was it us? Did we change? Why didn't Hillary Kimball drop the rat to its death? Did she see something in our eyes? Whatever the reason, by the time we returned from Thanksgiving break, it was clear that the change had occurred. Suddenly, Stargirl was not dangerous, and we rushed to embrace her. Embrace means to love or to hug or to accept. Calls of "Stargirl" flew down the hallways. We couldn't say her name often enough. It tickled us to mention her name to strangers and watch their expressions on their faces. Girls liked her, boys liked her, and most remarkable, the attention came from all kinds of kids. Shy mice and princesses, jocks and eggheads, right? Quiet kids, fancy kids, sports people, eggheads. Eggheads is like a rude term for nerds. People who I guess nerd is rude too. People who like to study and learn. We honored her by imitation. A chorus of ukuleles strummed in the lunchroom. Flowers appeared on classroom desks. And one day it rained, and a dozen girls ran outside to dance. The pet shop at Micah Mall ran out of rats. The best chance for us to express our admiration came in the first week of December. We were gathered in the auditorium for the annual oratorical contest. Oratorical means speech giving. Sponsored by the Arizona League of Women Voters. The event was open to any high school student who cared to show his or her stuff as a public speaker. The microphone was yours for 7 minutes. To talk about anything you'd like. The winner would move on to the district competition. We're on page 39. Usually only 4 or 5 students entered the contest at MAHS. That year, there were 13, including Stargirl. You didn't have to be a judge to see that she was far and away the best. She gave an animated speech, a performance really, titled Elf Owl, Call Me by My First Name. Her gray-brown homesteader dress was the color of her subject. I couldn't see her freckles from the audience, but imagined them dancing on her nose as she flicked her head this way and that. When she finished, we stomped on the floor and whistled and shouted for more. While the judges went through the charade of conferring, a film was shown. Meaning when the judges were deciding, a film was shown. It was a brief documentary about the previous year's state finals. It featured the winner, a boy from Yuma. The most riveting moments of the film came not during the contest, but during its aftermath. When the boy arrived back at Yuma High, the whole school mobbed him in the parking lot. Banners, cheerleaders, band music, confetti, streamers, pumping his arms in the air and pumping his arms in the air, the returning hero rode their shoulders into school. The film ended and the lights went on, and the judges proclaimed Stargirl the winner. She would now go on to the district competition in Red Rock, they said. The state finals would be held in Phoenix in April. Again and again we whooped and whistled. Such was the acclamation we gave her in those last weeks of the year. Excuse me. But we also gave something to ourselves. That's the end of 39. All right, chapter 9, page 40. In the Sonoran Desert, which is the name of the desert in Arizona, there are ponds. You could be standing in the middle of one and not know it, because the ponds are usually dry. Nor would you know that inches below your feet, frogs are sleeping, their heartbeats down to once or twice a minute. They lay dormant and waiting. Dormant means like sleeping or waiting for a really long time. These mud frogs, for without water, their lives are incomplete. They are not fully themselves. For many months, they sleep like this within the earth. And then the rain comes, and 100 pairs of eyes pop out of the mud, and at night, 100 voices call across the moonlit water. If you've never seen this or you want to know more, I would Google it. Google frogs who go dormant or frogs without water. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, here we go. Back to page 40. It was wonderful to see. Wonderful to be in the middle of wee mud frogs awakening all around. We were awash in tiny attentions. Small gestures, words, empathies, thought to be extinct, came to life. For years, the strangers among us had passed sullenly in the hallways. Now we looked, we nodded, we smiled. If someone got an A, others celebrated too. If someone sprained an ankle, others felt the pain. We discovered the color of each other's eyes, right? So he's making the comparison between the kids at their school, right, living in the mud for all these years, and the frogs, right? So we're making comparisons here. It was a rebellion she led, a rebellion for rather than against, ourselves for ourselves, for the dormant mud frogs we had been for so long. Kids whose voices had never been heard before spoke up in class. Letters to the editor filled the whole page of the school's newspaper, December edition. More than 100 students tried out for the spring review. One kid started a camera club. Another wore hush puppies instead of sneak peepers. Hush puppies are like, they're kind of like old man dress shoes. You should look those up too. A plain, timid girl painted her toenails Kelly green, and a boy showed up with purple hair. None of this was publicly acknowledged, and there were no PA announcements. PA is like when they make announcements to the whole school. And no TV coverage, no headlines in the Micah Times saying, MAHS students, austere, individuality erupts. But it was there. It was happening. I was used to peering through the lens, to framing the picture, and I could see it. I could feel it in myself. I felt lighter, unshackled, as if something I had been carrying all along, if something I had been carrying had fallen away. But I didn't know what to do about it. There was no direction to my liberation, my freedom. I had no urge to color my hair or trash my sneakers, so I just enjoyed the feeling and watched the once amorphous student body, amorphous meaning the same, not different, separate itself into hundreds of individuals. The pronoun we itself seemed to crack and drift apart in pieces. Ironically, as we discovered and distinguished ourselves, a new collective came into being. A vitality, a presence, a spirit that had not been there before. It echoed from the rafters in the gym. Go Electrons! Sorry. It sparkled in the water fountains, and at the holiday assembly, the words of the alma mater had wings. It's a miracle, I gushed to Archie one day. He stood on the edge of his back porch, and he did not turn. He pulled the pipe slowly from between his lips, and he spoke as if to Senor Seguaro, or to the blazing mountains beyond. Who's Archie? Do you remember who Archie is? We learned about him in the last one. Right, he's the older gentleman who collects stuff and runs his house like a museum that the kids all talk to. Right, so he's an older guy. He's not a high school student. Nice. Best hope it's not, he said. The troubles with miracles is they don't last long. And the trouble with bad times is you can't sleep through them. It was a golden age, those few weeks in December and January. And how could I know that when the end came, I would be in the middle of it? When the end comes. Okay, before you keep going, listen to my questions and then pause it. So what do you think is going to happen? But also think to yourself, how did the kids change? How did the schools change? And why? Right? What is causing this change? And then what do you think he means by, how could I know that when the end came, I would be in the middle of it? What's going to end? And why is he going to be in the middle? Okay, pause this and think about that, and then keep going. Okay, here we go. All right, page 43, chapter 10. All my resistance to putting Stargirl on hot seat vanished. Okay, I said to Kevin, let's do it. Schedule her. He started off. I grabbed his arm. Wait, ask her first. He laughed. Right, like she's gonna say no. No one had ever said no to the hot seat. Any reluctance to answering personal or embarrassing questions always yielded to the lure of appearing on TV. Right? Basically, everyone liked being on TV better than they were worried about answering embarrassing questions. Anyway, here we go. If anyone could resist that lure, that drive to pull them in, I figured it would be Stargirl. That day after school, Kevin gave me the thumbs up, came at me thumbs up and grinning. It's a go. She said yes. First, I was surprised. This didn't fit my impression of her. I didn't know what this was, an early glimpse of something was soon to be much more of. Behind the dazzling talents and differentness, she was far more normal than I had realized. Then I was elated. I was excited. We yipped, we high-fived, we saw visions of our most popular show ever. It was mid-January, and we set a date for February the 13th, the day before Valentine's. We wanted a full month for build-up. With my resistance now gone, I jumped in with both feet. We planned a promo campaign. We got art students to do the posters, and we jotted down questions for Kevin to ask in case the jury ran out. Fat chance of that happening. We didn't have to post the usual jury notice. Dozens of kids volunteered. And then things changed again. Page 44. The dots, like this, you'll see these in books sometimes. It doesn't mean a new chapter. It just kind of means like a pause and then something else, right? So it's still in the same chapter. It's just like a pause. Anyway, you'll see that throughout books. In the courtyard of our school stood a 5-foot sheet of plywood, which is wood, in the shape of a roadrunner, which is a type of bird in the desert. Google it. It was a bulletin board, strictly for student use, always taped intact with messages and announcements. One day, we found the following computer printout taped to the plywood roadrunner. Roadrunner, hard word to say. I pledge allegiance to the United Turtles of America and to the fruit bars of Borneo, one planet in the Milky Way, incredible, with justice and black bean burritos for all. Handwritten across the bottom were words, "This is how she says the Pledge of Allegiance." No one had to tell us who she was. Apparently she was overheard in the homeroom as we said the pledge each morning. Right? Who's the she we're talking about? You're probably correct. As far as I knew, we were not particularly a patriotic bunch. Right? I didn't hear people saying they were offended. Some thought it was funny. Some giggled and nodded knowingly as if to say, there she goes again. On the following mornings, more than one kid was heard reciting the new pledge. Within days, a news story wildfired through the student body. A senior girl, Anna Grisdale, lost her grandfather after a long illness. The funeral took place on a Saturday morning. For a while, everything seemed routine, seemed regular. The crowd of people at the church, the line of cars with their headlights on, the smaller group of clustered around the grave for the final farewell. After the brief gravesite service, the funeral director handed everyone a long-stemmed flower. Upon leaving, each mourner, each person who was sad, laid his or her flower over the casket. This was when Anna Grisdale first noticed Stargirl. Through her own tears, Anna could see that Stargirl was crying also, and she wondered if Stargirl had been at the church as well. Even more, she wondered why Stargirl was there at all. Could she have been friends with her grandfather without Anna knowing? Anna's mother asked her who the unfamiliar girl was. Afterward, the mourners were invited to Anna's house for lunch, and about 30 came. There was a buffet of cold cuts, which is like cold meat, and salads and cookies. Stargirl was there, chatting with members of the family, but not eating or drinking anything. Suddenly, Anna heard her mother's voice. It was no louder than the others, but it was different. "What are you doing here?" Sudden stillness, everyone staring. They were in the front of the picture window. Anna had never seen her mother so angry. Miss Grisdale had been very close to her father, and they had built an addition to the house so that he could live with them. She glared down at Stargirl. "Answer me." Stargirl gave no reply. "You didn't even know him, did you?" Still, Stargirl said nothing. "Did you?" Page 46. And then Anna's mother was flinging open the front door and pointing as if banishing her to the desert. "Leave my house." Stargirl left. Think about that for a second. Why do you think Stargirl was there? And why do you think Anna's mom was so mad? Right? Would you have been mad if some random person showed up to your family member's funeral? I don't know either. Think about it. Danny Pike was 9 years old. He loved to ride the bicycle he had gotten for his birthday. One day after school, he lost control and plowed into a mailbox, right? He hit a mailbox. He broke his leg, but that wasn't the worst of it. A blood clot developed. A blood clot is when your blood doesn't flow properly, it stops somewhere in your body. And he was airlifted to Children's Hospital in Phoenix, where he was operated on. For a while, it was touch and go. but within a week, and he was on his way back home. All this was reported to the Micah Times, as it was the celebration when Danny arrived at his home on Pinion Lane. The 5-column photo in the Times showed Danny on his father's shoulders, surrounded by a mob of neighbors. In the foreground was a new bike, and the big sign that read, "Welcome home, Danny." It wasn't until days later that the front page photo appeared on the Plywood Roadrunner. We gathered around to see something we hadn't noticed before. An arrow from a thick red felt-tipped marker pointed at one of the tiny faces crowded into the frame. It was the face of a girl, beaming. She was smiling huge, as if Danny Pike were her little brother back from the dead. It was Stargirl. And there was the bike. The various members of the Pike family, parents, grandparents, et al., meaning and others, each thought someone else had bought Danny the new bicycle. Several days went by before they discovered, to their great surprise, that none of them had. So where did the bike come from? High schoolers who heard the story and saw the picture had a pretty good idea. Apparently, the Pikes did not. The bike became the focus of a family squabble, a family argument. Mr. Pike was mad because nobody he asked would admit to buying the bike, and probably because he hadn't done it himself. Mrs. Pike was mad because no way, not for the last 1 year, would she allow Danny, for at least 1 year, would she allow Danny back on wheels. Right, so the dad is angry that somebody else bought the bike, not him, and the mom is angry because she doesn't want her kid back on a bike. One night, the new, still unridden bike wound up at the Pike's front curb with the trash cans. By the time the trash collector came the next day, it was gone, and Danny got a BB gun instead. The Pledge of Allegiance, the Grisdale funeral, and the Danny Pike affair. These things were noted, but they had no immediate impact on Stargirl's popularity at school. Not so with cheerleading and the boys' basketball season. We're going to pause there at the end of 47. Okay, so I want you to go back to this chapter, kind of look through what all the things that were happening, right? Maybe make notes about some things that Stargirl did and kind of how she's been changing. And then go ahead and do your vocabulary and your summaries. And then start thinking, right? If this isn't what messed with her popularity, maybe it's something with the cheerleading and the boys' basketball season. What's gonna happen next, guys? Okay, here we go. So, go ahead and do your summaries and vocabulary, and I'll see you back here next time. That was annoying, sorry.